This is Chris Peterson with a News 11 special report. Tonight we have the amazing story of a plane crash that changed a boy's life. We send you now to Jerry Anderson live with this amazing story of survival. Jerry?
It really is an amazing story, Chris, and I am here with the one survivor from that plane crash. This is Brian Robeson.
Hello, Jerry.
Brian, it's so nice to meet you, and thanks for spending time with us here. First of all, I'm wondering, what was it like being stranded up there in the Canadian wilderness?
It was scary. One second, I'm looking out the window of the co-pilot seat. The next, the pilot has a heart attack and I have to fly the plane into the water. I don't even know how to fly a plane. It was awful. And I kept trying to call this man on the radio so I could just tell him where my location was, and I didn't even know where my location was. And I was just breaking up, and it was so awful. And the next thing I knew, we crashed into the water, and I was just trying to swim towards shore. Then eventually I woke up, and I realized I was alone. I never want to do it again.
No, I wouldn't think so. I know a lot of us, when we think of Canada, we think of really rough weather. What kind of weather did you encounter during the time you were stranded?
Well, Jerry, I was lucky because the weather was mostly warm and there wasn't a lot of rain. But I made a shelter so I could shield myself from the weather. And eventually there was a tornado.
A tornado?
A tornado.
So you really had some kind of a mixed bag of weather up there.
Yeah. But when the tornado occurred, it destroyed everything I had, even the shelter. And that was like the worst day ever for me.
Most important question I think people have in their minds is, how did you do it? How did you survive when you were stranded?
Well, after the plane crash, I felt as if I had nothing, and I was nothing. But eventually, after I woke up, I realized I had my hatchet, which was a farewell gift from my mother. She gave it to me so I could work in the oil fields with my dad while I was over at his house. And little did I know that the hatchet would be my key to survival. I caught most of my fish and all my other food from the weapons I made from a hatchet, such as spears and a bow and arrow, and the hatchet itself. For instance, I caught a fool bird, as I like to call them, with a spear. And with my bow and arrow, I caught fish, and I ate all those. And the way I got my water is I just drank from the creek. And that's how I survived.
That's pretty incredible.
But the most important thing I did was I stayed positive.
All right, staying positive, that's important and a good lesson for all of us. It is an incredible story. It is so nice to meet you. Thank you for a great interview.
Thank you, Jerry.
Right, thank you so very much. Want to get back out to Chris now, who has more on the exact location where this amazing story took place, more on the crash scene itself.
Thanks, Jerry. Let's take a look at where that plane crashed. This is the Canadian wilderness where it happened, and the plane dropped out of the sky somewhere around here and plunged into the lake right here, eventually sinking to the bottom. Now, Brian mentioned a tornado. Robert, what are the chances of a tornado happening?
Well, Chris, you know, in the United States, we have over 1,000 tornadoes in a year and sometimes over 200 in August alone. But in a remote location like this, for that big of a tornado to develop, that strong, one that's going to destroy everything in its path, it's a very rare occurrence and might happen once every 5 years, once every 10 years. It's not certainly something that we could have foreseen happening here in August.
Thank you, Robert. And there you have it, the amazing story of a plane crash that changed a boy's life. I'm Chris Peterson.